Welcome back to another episode of The Banana Show, where we speak about a variety of topics, mental health and self-improvement related. And today we're going to have a guest, Tommy Berrabe, who is a life coach who helps business people overcome mental illness such as depression, anxiety, fatigue, and to achieve their peak performance. And without further ado, I'm going to get into the interview. But before I get into the interview, I want you guys to like, subscribe, and share this video. If you're listening from Google Podcasts, go ahead and share it as well. Spotify, my podcast will be available across all podcasting platforms, or most podcasting platforms. So without a further ado, we're going to get into the interview. So, Tommy, I want to thank you for coming here today. I really do appreciate it. I know that my platform, we mostly talk about mental health and self-improvement. And I'm so happy that, you're able to talk about depression with me today.
Thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to be on. And yes, I could talk about this for days. So, yeah.
Thank you. I am sure my audience will appreciate your knowledge for today. So my first question that I have is, how do you know when somebody has depression? What are some signs that you can spot, even if the person is high functioning?
See, I've been depressed myself in life. Now, I know in the UK, it's almost like everybody's depressed now. But I've been depressed in my life, and I think there's a depressed where you want to sleep all the time, but there's also a depressed where you struggle to sleep. And I feel like I've gone through both of those. At one point in my life, I was literally sleeping for about 18 hours a day.
Whoa.
I was going to, and I'm not a great sleeper, but I was going to sleep early in the evening, sleeping all through the night, and then getting up the next day.
Still
And then
tired.
sitting, but moping around all day, just eating, and then sleeping through the day and things. But with people that so many people in this day and age are walking around feeling way below par. Borderline depression or full-on depression, and some people do hide it well. You can't always tell with people when they are depressed.
That's true. That's true. Only if the person is like really close to you, then you can probably spot it.
Yeah, if the person's really close to you, you can notice some things. But like, me at the time, I was, I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to do anything. And someone said to me one day at the time, "Why don't you get a hobby?" And I thought to myself, I've got loads of hobbies. Why is this person saying that to me? I like so many different things, but I don't do any of them because I didn't want to be around anyone, and I didn't want to be a burden on anyone either. I just didn't want to be around anyone. And that was how it was for me at the time, and not a nice place to be. And now with the mental health awareness, there's a lot more awareness being raised, and it can be a very isolating, dark place to be. So it's great that there is a lot more awareness for mental health now, and people feel like they can maybe come out and talk to people a little bit more.
That's true. And I really appreciate that there is awareness being drawn, because a lot of people are suffering in silence and they don't understand how to properly deal with something, because this is not something that you're comfortable sharing with others, because they might not understand and they might shame you for your feelings. So you just feel isolated without the knowledge of knowing how to deal with it. How did you get out of your depressive rut? What are the things that you implemented?
I'm going to go pretty deep now, but at the time, I didn't know what to do, and never in my head did I think it was anything to do with my lifestyle, right? I just thought this was an illness. And to be honest with you, I thought I was turning into my mum. My mum suffered for years with mental illness and still does. And I thought I was going down that route. And at the time, I had signed up to do a personal trainer's course to become a personal trainer. But while I was trying to do this course, I kept saying to myself, because obviously you get a lot of negative thoughts, and I was saying to myself, how can you help other people if you can't even help yourself? And I actually rang up the Samaritans at one time. I don't know if you've heard of the Samaritans. It's just like a phone number you can ring and you can just talk to a random person. They don't judge you or anything like that. And I rang them up and I was crying. And at the same time, I didn't want to speak to someone I knew about it. I didn't want to put this on them. But I think the worst point for me was I had a motorbike at the time. And the only time I would leave the house was to go to the shop and get food. So I was going to the shop, getting food, coming home, going to a shop a couple of hours later, getting more food and coming home. And when I was riding my bike, I was thinking, if I just crashed this bike now and had a serious injury, I wouldn't have to go through with this personal trainer's course, because the whole thing seemed so daunting to me. I was so scared. I thought, how can I help other people if I'm in the state that I'm in now? So anyway, thankfully, there was sort of no choice. The tutors and the mentors were sort of pushing me to complete this course. And there was this date in my head where I had to do a practical assessment. And I was so scared. I was so scared and I was putting everything off. I was, all the learning that I needed to be doing, I was putting off and off and off. And I was making the situation even more stressful for myself. So at the time, I didn't know what to change to get out of this depression. And I just thought I was stuck with it, to be honest with you. So I was sort of forced out of it by going through this course, etc. But if I knew back then what I know now, then I would have been able to take myself out of this place, for sure.
I understand that. That seems like something that we all do. Like we procrastinate because the task at hand just looks so hard and we're so worried about what we're going to achieve or how the end result is going to turn out and if it's going to be the best, that we just end up holding ourselves down, which makes the task even more harder than it needs to be. So it's a lot on the mentals. It really is.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Um, what I want to ask is, what are some things that you would say people can implement if they're feeling depressed? What are some tips that they can use that might help them within the moment get through the process of being depressed?
Here's the thing, I love talking about this because I feel like we are missing something big when it comes to mental health, right? And the obvious thing would be to talk to someone, right? Talk to someone. But unfortunately, it is going to be quite hard to solve our problems at a head level when they are actually created somewhere else in our body. Now, our stomach is referred to our second brain, right? And when the brain in our belly isn't happy, you can bet your life that the brain in your head isn't either. We are living in a world that is perfectly crafted and perfectly situated to keep us getting more of all the things that we don't want, need, deserve, or have time for. We are living a typical lifestyle and eating a typical diet and living a typical way, and we are none the wiser of how to live any better to starve off some of the things that we are getting, such as depression. And depression is looked at like it is a completely separate issue from the body itself, when
Yeah, that's
really,
true.
the mind, the body is the mind. The body is all one thing. When something is going wrong, I say to people, it is like the light coming up on the dashboard of your car. It is a signal telling you that if you don't make some sort of change right now, you can expect more of the same. Now, talking to people and having a great support network is imperative. It is so important, but while doing the other things as well. And I am coaching people who are suffering with low mood, fatigue, and brain fog. And these things seem to go hand in hand. And, while it's great, like I said, to have people to talk to, we have to focus on the function of our gut health. And we can do this by paying attention to these four. Now, remember this: nutrition, hydration, sleep, and movement. For every day that we are not focusing on these, we are staying stuck down, sick, sad, depressed, and possibly going round in circles.
Wow, I actually learned something today. Like, I understand that depression is, you know, how healthy your body is, you can fight it off. But I didn't know that. I know that movement and hydration helps, but I didn't know that, you can actually pay attention to 4 factors to help you get out of the rut that you're in, which is, as you mentioned, hydration, sleep, movement, and what's the other one again?
Nutrition, hydration, sleep, and movement. You see,
Yes.
what one thing I'd like to say as well, you know what I said about the second brain being in your belly? Yeah. The belly and the brain convey messages between the two of them. There's a lot of studies and a lot of research showing this. And this is known as the gut brain axis. So
Wow.
what goes in the body, whether that is food, air, drink, what goes in is going to have a direct impact on how we look, think, feel, and function going forward.
And that is true, because even if you look at someone who suffers from both depression and anxiety, I have both of them. So if I intake too much caffeine, or even because I'm very sensitive to caffeine, so if I intake the amount that my body cannot manage, I'll be anxious the entire day, and it will not
Yeah.
go away until the caffeine wears off. But what are some foods, or to keep it simple, what are some of the stuff that we need to be eating to help our gut, help our mind to function properly?
If we go to a doctor with depression and we go through, we fill out over here in the UK, we fill out a form, and if they think we're depressed enough, they will give us an antidepressant, right? And these antidepressants are known as something called SSRIs, which stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Now, in that SSRIs, what I've just said is a word called serotonin. This is known as the happy chemical. This gets made by the bacteria that live in our stomach. However,
Oh,
when
wow.
we are not feeding the bacteria in our stomach and we are succumbing to the typical diet of, whatever that may be, we're starving this bacteria. So we are potentially not making this happy chemical in our stomach called serotonin. So it would be so important to, coming back to the four again, nutrition, hydration, sleep, and movement, to look after our nutrition by nourishing our body every single day with foods that grow from the ground. It doesn't matter which ones. Foods that grow from the ground are going to nourish our bacteria, and it is those bacteria that make the happy chemical, serotonin.
When you say fruits that grow from the ground, you mean foods overall, like anything that grows on a tree that's not processed?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, anything that God put here, anything that God put here. But obviously, man has changed all of that, because the foods that God put here that grow, man has changed them all now. They've turned into foods that are sprayed with chemicals. You know, a lot of these fruits and vegetables in the supermarket, obviously it's better for people to eat them than not, but even these are heavily sprayed with chemicals such as herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. So
Yeah.
going organic would be the way to get the most nutrition from these vegetables. And it's these vegetables that will nourish that bacteria to make the happy chemical serotonin, and to generally get our bodies functioning the way they should be.
I understand that, but sometimes it's hard to figure out which foods are organic from which aren't, because of the GMO that's around these days, and this thing where we need to move fast with the process so that we can feed a large amount of people. So there's that we're fighting as well. So, I feel like it's hard to figure out which foods are organic and which aren't.
Oh, 100%, 100%. But keeping it basic and stripping it back a bit, I'd say, try and limit those processed foods. Try and limit those and increase our consumption of the foods that God put there, because they was put there for a reason.
I was reading somewhere that said that protein actually helps. Is this true?
Protein is another thing that is needed by the body. It is needed for muscle and tissue repair. Um, yeah, it's another thing that's needed, just like fats, just like carbohydrates. These things are all needed. But again, are we getting our protein from a tub of manufactured man-made powder, Or are we getting that protein from something that swims in water, or something that once had eyes, or even if you're, if you're against fish and meat, things like beans and nuts and things like that. So I'd say yes, protein is highly important, but it just depends on where we are getting this protein from.
Okay, that's true. That's a good answer. And thank you for that information. I feel like I needed to know that because I didn't know that. So I'm learning here today as well. Have you encountered anyone that is high functioning depression, and how have you helped them to get better, even though they're already high functioning? They're already functioning, doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. But how did you help them mentally feel better?
110%. Now, I find a lot of time with depression, it isn't something that you can just, it will just go away forever. You have all the power. Whether you make that depression, if you're suffering with depression, you have all the power. If you make that depression worse or make it better. And I teach people that they have a volume switch, right? Now, if you imagine this volume switch, let's say is, they're very depressed, they're feeling very low, and they're at about an 8 out of 10, right? It's pretty severe. Yeah. I let these people know, and I teach them that when they're on my programs, they find that this volume switch, they turn it all the way down to like a 2 or a 1 after a few weeks. And I've had people saying to me, I'm buzzing. I feel like a kid again. This is unbelievable. And they've turned their volume switch down. But here's the thing. When they start to mismanage again, when they start to put alcohol in their body, processed foods, or, Christmas, for example, was a
Yeah.
perfect example. When they start to go off track, that volume switch can creep up a little bit. We have all the power to turn our volume switch up, or conversely, turn it down and even keep it down.
Oh, yes, I understand that. Because working on anything overall is like working to get the body that you want, or working towards a goal. The moment you stop for a small amount of times, it can put you back even a step or two back. And you are in danger of falling back into the same habits that you're trying to get rid of. So I do understand that, and I do appreciate you mentioning that, because it actually does makes sense. If we want to be better, it's constant work. But what if you aren't able to do the constant work? What are some things that won't be as hard but will keep you from falling back into the process that you were in before?
Well, here's the thing, I mean, some of these people, like I just mentioned, who I'm working with, and they've sort of really turned down the volume switch on their depression, and they're feeling great. And then all of a sudden they fall back into their old ways, and then up it goes again, and they're feeling really bad. This isn't so much as called cheating their diet or cheating their lifestyle. We call this challenging. And they have found out that by doing this, it's made them worse again. And they have the choice then, do they revert back to that old lifestyle, or do they continue on a new lifestyle? Because I believe that we don't just all of a sudden one day wake up and we're depressed, or we don't just all of a sudden one day and wake up and we've got some disease. I believe it's a slow accumulation over
Yeah,
time.
it
You know,
is.
like the term death by 1,000 cuts, it isn't one thing that done it. It is a slow build up over time, and we don't see the signals along the way, and before you know it, we're in a place where it's pretty dark.
I get
So
it.
in answer to your question, I don't think there's one magic bullet. I don't think there's one magic food, one magic supplement, one magic exercise. It's the whole program. It's a holistic approach with the 4 that I'm speaking about: nutrition, hydration, sleep, and movement.
I'll make sure to write that down, because I think that will be beneficial to me and my audience as well, because I wasn't looking at it at that point of view. I just know that sometimes you need to get up and go outside and get the movement in, or you need to drink some water or rest a lot. But I wasn't thinking that, okay, combining all 4 factors and trying to work on them individually and better them will actually make it better. I wasn't thinking from that perspective. So, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
enlightened.
sure.
Uh,
Good, good.
um, for the people that, because we're going through coronavirus now, and some people might be stuck in a toxic environment. What advice would you give those people who aren't able to move from that toxic environment?
When you say a toxic environment, can you
Around
elaborate a bit?
family members, or around people that contributes to their depression? How do they help to build up the mental stability? Apart from, doing, working on the 4 factors that we spoke about, what can they do to move forward or help them, build mental stability?
Yeah, I mean, we are we go off the energy that we are receiving from others around us. And the people around us have a big influence on our energy. So, it is a tough time. I mean, being stuck around the same people all the time, and they can annoy you. If you're stuck around the same people all the time. But I feel like, if we are feeling better in ourselves, we are then going to react to things a lot differently. I've had clients, for example, they use this as a little marker. They're driving their car, for example. Someone pulls out on them. They're beeping, they're swearing, right? But when they are feeling better in their body, they are calmer, they are more relaxed, their mental health, their physical health is better, and they don't find themselves reacting as much. Now, I feel like if we're sitting around people that are just really ticking us off all the time, really irritating us, if we are looking after those 4 that you just said, putting a bit more focus into those, we're going to feel better. And these people might not actually get to us as much. They might not annoy us. And then our ways might rub off on them. It may have a
Yeah.
knock-on effect, and that is what it's all about. I've learned of people that have had a knock-on effect on me, and it goes on and on and on. And I think that is one way, other than just getting away from them. I think we can all help each other out.
Oh, so it's like building a tolerance, taking care of yourself and filling yourself with positivity in order to build your tolerance through them, so that then when they act up, we know how to deal with them, rather than putting gasoline to fire, so that now that they see that they didn't cause a negative reaction to us, then they might not react negatively, because we all trigger each other sometimes.
That's
So,
right. But when you said people acting up, I mean, you're right. People do, but really, this is a true reflection of how they feel inside themselves, and the way people act to other people, the way their fuses are so short. I've noticed it myself so many times. It is all a reflection of what is going on inside our body and how we feel.
that's true. That's true. I do understand that. And I've learned a lot from you so far. And I want to ask you, is there any question that I haven't asked you that you think I should have asked? Or anything that you'd like to share that I didn't ask you, but it would be beneficial to my audience?
I'd just like to say that, when I'm talking about these 4: nutrition, hydration, sleep, and movement, I'm not saying to people, you've got to stop eating processed food. You've got to make water your number 1 drink and only drink. You've got to go out and pound the streets for an hour of running. I'm
Because
not
that
saying
seems
these things.
hard.
That's too much too soon. And doing too much too soon can be our downfall. But what I am saying is, if we make the task so small, it becomes more manageable. Can't do a 15-minute walk? Do a 10-minute. Too daunting for you? Do a 5-minute. Don't like vegetables? Put them in a smoothie and blend them up. Don't like fruits? Put them in a smoothie and blend them up. Start very small. If you eat a sandwich for lunch, maybe have a carrot with it, because that carrot is going to nourish the bacteria in our belly to make more of the things we want. Think serotonin, the happy chemical. Think other vitamins such as B12. Heard of the B vitamins, the energy vitamins? We all need good energy to feel good, because when our energy is low, again, when we're tired, we can get ticked off easier with things. So starting small, and building it into a habit, putting a tiny amount of focus into those 4 each day. And if you can't exercise, if you can't get movement in, don't worry, you still got nutrition, hydration, and sleep to focus on.
Oh,
So I know so many people, they've got they've got problems where, you know, that they can't actually exercise, physical problems where they can't exercise, but nutrition is medicine. You know, if we can focus on that, we can potentially turn down that volume switch on anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I always say to people, fill in the blank for yourself. Whatever it is you're suffering with, fill in the blank. It could be anything, because you're going to improve it all the same way by focusing on them things.
Oh, that was very, awakening. So if you can't, it's all about finding the balance. If you can't focus on one thing, make sure you're getting 3 out of the 4 done. Be on your way, because if you do nothing at all, you're just going to be stuck feeling bad every day, and it's going to be the same process over and over. So at least try to meet 3 and don't worry about not being able to meet 4.
If we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got, plus a little bit more.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to look at it as well. So I want to thank you for coming here. I really do appreciate you. And I have learned a lot, and a lot that I'm actually going to implement and go right down right now. So I am grateful for having you, and I hope that you can come back on my podcast one day to speak about other issues that we're facing to help our mind, body, and soul.
I appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure coming on. And if anyone wants to find me, to reach out, to ask any questions at all, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram under the name Tommy, and the surname is Berrabe. Bit of a strange one, but it's spelled Berrabe. You can find me in them 2 places.
Thank you. I'm going to put all your information in the description box when everything is edited, so that people can find you and stuff and come to you for help and such. Do you offer like one-on-one coaching
I
and stuff
do.
like that?
Yeah. I do one-to-one coaching online.
Okay.
Yeah. So that can be done from anywhere in the world.
Okay. So I'm going to have all that information in the description box when the podcast is aired, so that people know where to find you.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
Okay. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you again in another episode.
No problem.